Good evening, YouTube. So working on the driver's side, head side on my 4Runner, and one thing I wanted to add was some sort of like a floor here and a stop on the front side of this to keep spare parts and things from falling down into kind of the abyss down there. You can get to that area. There's a little storage pocket there that you can remove the bin that's in there and get down there, but it's pretty dark and you've got the seat belt and you've got wires and stuff down there, so it would be pretty unpleasant to have to try to fish something out of that black hole down there. So what I wanted to do was come up with basically a piece of plywood for the front and then a support piece just to go over the wheel well area, and then a piece on the back. So what I did was I used some sophisticated CAD. This piece is the back. I had to modify it a little bit from that. And then this is the front piece. You can see it fits around where the wheel well sheet metal is. And then I had the long piece here. Yeah, I had to do a little bit of trimming. I used the cardboard to cut out the plywood, but then with the plywood you still have to do some trimming, because with the cardboard you can shove the piece in and kind of bend it a little bit and get it to pop into place, but with the plywood it's a lot stiffer. So yeah, I think the one thing I need to add is right in this area. You can see it's a little bit springy. So I think what I need to do is add a couple of blocks along there. Actually, I might just see if I can get some styrofoam blocks and put under there just for some support. Because this part here is on the wheel well arch, but then that sheet metal curves away towards the outside, so this outside edge isn't quite supported. And then likewise down at the bottom here, where, let's see, this is the piece that fits down in there. I have it notched at the bottom to fit over. There's a little piece of the sheet metal that sticks out. That bottom piece rests a little bit on a little bump out in the sheet metal down there, but then the rest of it's about that far off the bottom of the body panel down there, and it's kind of a really odd shape. And one of the issues with making the plywood go all the way down there is that you get water in here. It's not wet, but you can get water. I mean, there's signs of like mud down there, you know, dried mud. Part of the problem is, you can see I've got these white spots. That's where I used to have fender flares that used pop rivets to attach to the outside of the body. And when I took those off, you have to drill out the pop rivets, and now I've got a bunch of holes in there. I've tried plugging them over the years, and I've got them plugged again. Now that I can get to the inside, it's a little easier to plug them. So what I'm going to do on this one at the bottom, like I say, it's kind of an odd shape, so I think I'm going to just try to trim down a piece of styrofoam to fit down at the very bottom, and let the plywood rest on top of the styrofoam for a little bit of support, and to keep it out of any water that gets in down there. I think that'll work. And then I've got my access hatch right here, so I can open that up and get up to the front there, get down to the back. I do have a kind of a taller area here, probably about a foot high, that I could put some tall skinny part. Yeah, I'll have to see if my fuel pump fits down there. I've got a spare fuel pump, I've got a spare engine computer. I'll put hoses and belts, fuel filter, oil filter, maybe a couple of spare relays, distributor cap, plug wires, spark plugs, spare parts for the truck, and that's going to fill this whole area up. And then I'll have the access hatch latched in place, and all those spare parts will just be here, and I don't have to worry about packing them and unpacking them. Everything's going to be in here, that I can just jam this area full of spare parts. And then close the lid, and then the next thing I'm going to do is up here I've got a piece of, it's I think 1 inch by 2 inch aluminum angle, and I'm going to attach that to the top here. I'll attach it to a couple of the factory bolts. That'll hold the angle down, and then in the 2-inch flange sticking up, I can put probably USB charging ports there, maybe a 12-volt lighter socket or two, and I'll have a switch here for the rear window, so an up-down for the rear window, and I'll have that in this area because it'll be protected from things hitting it. So I'll kind of use this as my little electronics charging area. And I was thinking about putting some of that on the bed sides, but I want to keep the bed sides easy to remove if I need to take them out. I don't want to have to hook up connectors behind there or stuff like that. That'll just be too much hassle. So I want to keep the bed side, just take all the screws out, slide the bed side out, and you can get in here. I finally got some threaded inserts in there for the factory trim panels there. I think I'll put the bed side behind and then put the trim panel over the top. And then I have the same style screws. These are number 10 over here. These are 8mm, and then these are 1/4 inch. But I've got the same screw heads for all of them, so I'll use button head cap screws for all the fasteners, so at least all the bolt heads will look the same. That was the first test fit after I got everything painted. And yeah, the hard part about this bottom one, I've got to push the screws through, and then I've got to reach in through that storage cubby with a nut driver and hold the nuts on the back side while I screw the screws in on the front side. And then the same thing down here. I've got to put a nut down there and then get a wrench on the bottom and a screwdriver on the top. This one I figured just one screw is all I really need to hold it in place. It's just for vertical support. I think I'll pull everything out, and then I got to add my styrofoam blocks on this piece, and then I got to do my styrofoam block down at the bottom there. So yeah, I just thought I'd show you that first test fit of the finished parts. So I think everything's going to fit. It's pretty tight getting everything in there, but the one thing I do have to do though is make sure I can take this out, because at some point, I don't know if you can see the black felt pen line there, that's about where I'm going to cut the fenders, because I want to cut the fenders on the outside to fit my 35-inch tires. So I'm going to have to cut the sheet metal, and so this thing will be on the sheet metal when that happens. But until I cut the fenders, that's why I've got to add the styrofoam blocks for a little bit of support. And then after I cut the sheet metal and patch everything up, this thing will probably be sitting on solid sheet metal all the way out, so I don't have to worry about it then. But I've got to take this out because I've got to get in there, cut that, probably spot weld and do some seam sealing and all that kind of stuff. So I need to be able to pull everything out to get to this, and then I can put everything back with after the fender work has been done. All my electrical wiring will be up here behind the aluminum flange, so I don't have to mess with any of the electrical wiring. It'll all be from here up in that area. Everything's looking good, so I thought I'd just show you what this looks like. But yeah, the idea is to keep stuff from falling down into that abyss down there. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense. So I'll show you once I get everything wrapped up. And as always, thanks for watching.